You're such a dumb bitch. You finally figured out after all this time, didn't you? You and I have actually been divorced for a year.
After 5 years of marriage, I found out my husband was having an affair. Shell-shocked by this reality, I immediately headed to the city office to submit the divorce documents. But
I'm sorry, ma'am. It seems the divorce procedure for these two individuals has been finalized a year ago already.
the receptionist at City Hall gave me back the documents, saying that they had already been filed a year ago. This was the beginning of my discovery of my husband's true nature, which was even more horrifying than adultery. It even had something to do with federal law, and life for him spiraled in what became the very definition of misery. My name is Anne, and I'm 30 years old. I'm a hardworking office woman, and I'm proud to admit that I'm a woman whose number one love is her work. Ever since I can remember, I've always loved to devote myself to something, and because of that, I often get very carried away with my work. Because of this, I couldn't find a boyfriend all that often, and a friend of mine invited me to a blind date, and that's where I met the man who eventually became my husband. His name is Raul, and he is 2 years younger than me. I was never very good at getting on the back seat in a relationship because of my manly, dominant personality. Because of this, I had few chances to have a relationship with a guy to begin with, and to make matters worse, none of those lasted very long. But Raul came off as a guy with a strong sense of self, meaning he knew who he is as a person, and how he could use his personality in the world to bring him what he desires most. The first time we met, after introducing ourselves, he kindly said to me,
I respect that part of you, Miss Anne.
and that got me thinking, is he the one who will stay by my side until the end? Such a strong feeling of hope had ignited within, and I started dating him. We got married without any particular conflicts about a year later. However, being in a relationship as a boyfriend and girlfriend and getting married are two different things altogether. I was always working, so I couldn't improve my general housework skills, which were already shamefully pathetic. Coupled with my extremely busy schedule, doing all the housework while trying to balance that out with work was going to be even more difficult. You really want to know how bad my household skills are? Well, you can guarantee that some part of the food I'm cooking is guaranteed to be burned. I really can't understand what exactly is clean enough, and you don't have to use a toothbrush to get the whole house spotless, or is just taking out the trash without dropping any soda cans on the floor enough? I once put in corn oil instead of the liquid laundry detergent when I was trying to wash my bed sheets. Long story short, those sheets were long since destroyed. Normally, people would be disillusioned and ashamed with me if I was this bad at housework, but my husband wasn't. He instead said,
I like doing housework. Please let me do at least some of the housework.
in reality, he did most of the housework. Some people asked me, but why should a man do the housework? Well, to each individual their own. While many couples may have some trouble understanding that, it was a system that worked perfectly with me and Raul, and made total sense, too. The fact that I also had a slightly higher income than my husband helped me decide to work harder to make up for the extra work he was doing at home. I think we were a very close and happy family. However, that doesn't mean our relationship isn't without its own problems. We'd been married for 5 years by a certain point and still didn't have any children. It was difficult for us to find the right time, partly because I was very busy. It would be a lie if I said I was not impatient in the slightest when a friend and colleague of mine announced she was pregnant. I wanted to work to continue making a nice living, but I also wanted children. My mom and dad had made a point about how raising a child was so worthwhile in the end, and my feelings for having some of my own were there, all right. But if I didn't act, I will never be able to make that dream a reality. That's why I tried to make time to ask Raul to do some business at night, but...
I'm sorry, honey. I'm just not in the mood.
And who could blame him? I was away from him for a long time because of my demanding work schedule. But I honestly didn't expect him to refuse my proposal. Well, back then, I didn't feel like I had much of a choice, so I merely responded, I see. Well, no worries. There's always next time. That was literally all I could think of to do. Everyone has moods and physical conditions, and they're bound to fluctuate depending on the day. I couldn't help but feel bad that I wasn't there for him that time around, and after that, I tried to find some kind of timing that went well with his physical condition and my schedule to ask him again. But after multiple attempts, he turned me down on every single one of them. I felt a little sad because I felt he didn't want me at all. But I loved Raul very dearly, and I was positive he loved me too. So everything was going to be all right in the end, I believed. Maybe he also thought it's important to have children at the right time and call it cognitive dissonance, a sense of delusional optimism, or something else. I don't really mind anymore. I was sure he was sending me a message telling me he wanted me to focus on my work for now. At the time, I thought this was a convenient way of thinking, and I didn't think about the matter at all thereafter. However, I would learn a few months later that I was extremely naive in my ways of thinking. On that particular day, I was visiting a certain friend for the first time in several months. She was pregnant and wanted to spend some time with me because her morning sickness had finally subsided. She works as a government employee at a city hall and was taking a rest because of her morning sickness. Because she had a good rest, she is now in good health and her baby is growing up nicely. Long time no see, how are you? I feel fine now. My belly has grown so big, though, and I often get kicked in the stomach. It was so much fun talking with my friend after a long time. But looking at her big belly, one that had a growing baby inside, I couldn't help but envy her. I wish I could have a baby myself. My true feelings spilled out of my mouth. Now, under normal circumstances, my friend would encourage me and say something along the lines of, "You'll figure it out with him eventually," but not on this occasion. My friend turned her head down towards the floor and, with a voice that sounded unnaturally grave for the occasion, asked me, "Anne, I know this is going to sound strange, but have you been having sex with your husband lately?" I was surprised to be asked such a direct question out of the blue. Of course, my friend and I have talked about such things before, but only to the extent that we would laugh about it with each other over a drink or two. At the very least, she is not the kind of person who would bring up such a topic out of nowhere on a day like this. Why are you suddenly asking me that, Kylie? Actually, I saw your husband when I was at the OBGYN a couple of weeks ago, and he was with a younger girl that was not you. Huh? That information hit me like a blow to the head with a sledgehammer. I was absolutely stunned by this completely unexpected story, and my friend noticed and did me the kindness of recounting that scene as she remembered it. At the OBGYN clinic where Kylie went for regular checkups on her pregnancy, she saw a young woman walking out of the examination room with a very happy look on her face. She must have found out she was pregnant. While Kylie was watching the woman from the waiting room, a man who seemed to be her partner stood up, and her smile became broader when he did. The man had his back to Kylie the whole time up until he stood up, and she didn't know who he was until this very moment. But when he and the woman walked away to another corner of the waiting room, she finally saw his face and was dead sure he was none other than Raul, my husband. Kylie showed me the man, and sure enough, he looked exactly like Raul. "Hey, Anne, when was the last time your husband asked you out? Are you having a good time as a married woman?" When my friend asked me that, I suddenly realized something that for some reason had eluded my consciousness for a long time. He hadn't even asked me out to dinner in the past few years, let alone recently, and let alone an invitation to the bedroom. I suggest you really look into it. Perhaps Kylie sensed something about my expression and about how my relationship was potentially plunging into despair, and kindly suggested that I do something about it. And in retrospect, her reasoning could be justified by a couple of things. While I come home late on certain days of the week because of overtime work, Raul often went out drinking on these days since his company has a rule against working overtime, and he was almost always off work on time. That meant he could make as much time as he wanted to go off gallivanting with women. My heart was shaken by this shocking story, but I just couldn't act on it. I loved my husband so much, and I wanted to trust him. And coupled with an immense feeling of guilt for doubting him, I was at the point where I just wanted to forget everything about it. But the more I tried to forget, the more the voices in my head acted up, suspecting Raul of foul play, of Raul having an affair with another woman. I dragged it out for days without being able to sort it out. And one fateful day, I made a huge mistake at work which involved one of our subcontractor companies. Fortunately, the mistake didn't cause any trouble for the subcontractor, but I put a huge burden upon my boss and my subordinates as a result, and I knew then that I couldn't go on like this, so I requested an investigation by a detective agency to clear up any suspicion, and I hoped nothing would turn up. But my hopes at the time were not answered to my satisfaction because sure enough, evidence that Raul was having an affair came rolling in. As I had suspected, he was meeting a woman on the days when I came home late or when he said he was going out for drinks with his friends. And the woman was pregnant. The couple my friend had seen at the OBGYN about a month back was definitely my husband and his adulterous lover. I was so shocked at my husband's betrayal that I stormed up to him with all the evidence. I was so angry that Raul had the audacity to deny me of my marriage of 5 years. I was so angry that I was losing my mind and my heart was racing. Raul Pattinson, care to explain what all this means? I'll never forgive you for having an affair and for getting this other woman pregnant. So help me, I'll divorce you. I let myself go ballistic, and I yelled at Raul at the top of my lungs. He'd never seen me like this before. But he just looked at me with a coy smile on his face and replied with an unnaturally calm voice.
You're such a dumb bitch. What, you finally figured out all this time, didn't you? Yes, you're divorcing me, I know. But little do you know, we're already divorced.
He said something I couldn't comprehend at all. I wanted to leave this man immediately. The repercussions of my love for him came in the form of terrible hatred for the scumbag, and I made him sign the divorce documents, but he kept telling me things like, I'm telling you, Anne, this won't work because it's already done. I ignored these ridiculous comments and immediately went to the city hall to submit the documents. But even stranger.
I'm afraid we cannot accept these documents, ma'am.
What do you mean? I'm sure there's no mistake in the information on the form. To my great surprise, the divorce papers were not accepted even after I went to the city hall. On the contrary, the receptionist in charge of me for the day told me,
No, everything seems to be in order. I'm sorry, ma'am. It seems the divorce procedure for these two individuals has been finalized a year ago already.
I was so confused. What in the world did she mean by finalized a year ago already? I inquired after what she meant, but unfortunately, no matter how many times I tried to get answers, I couldn't get any under administrative protocol. I felt that I was getting nowhere, so I called Kylie to see if she could help me with the bureaucratic nonsense. I told her the whole story and asked her why the divorce papers were not accepted. Wait a minute, you have to file for alimony and all that stuff before you get a divorce. Honey, you need to calm down first. Take a few deep breaths. Before she gave me anything useful, she told me to calm down. I had been so busy trying to get away from my husband as quickly as possible out of my hatred for him that I had completely missed the most important thing in these situations, which was a calm, steady mind to think rationally. Once I had regained my composure thanks to Kylie, I went to her house at her invitation. I'm sorry about earlier. I was pretty off my rocker, huh? You have every right to be angry. I mean, it all started when I said something in the first place. After my friend listened to me and calmed me down, I asked my friend why the divorce papers weren't accepted. If the paperwork wasn't incomplete and everything seemed in order, maybe Raul forged it completely. Forged the documents, you mean? People can do that? It happens every once in a while, but it's not unheard of. If it was a year ago, he probably wanted to marry the woman whom he was cheating on you with before she got pregnant. But he had to divorce you. And if it was revealed that the reason for the divorce was adultery, he would have to pay alimony. And I'd bet my entire savings he did not want to deal with that. That's why I think he filed the divorce papers on his own, claiming that you did sign them when in fact you didn't. This was coherent with what the city office told me, and the divorce papers had already been submitted. It just made sense. Of course, I want to divorce my husband, and I'm grateful that that's been sorted for the time being, but if it's because he falsified the divorce documents, I was not satisfied. I wonder if there's anything I can do. I'm not sure. To be honest, I think it would be very difficult to prove whether the divorce documents were falsified or not. Even the handwriting could be imitated well enough to give Raul the benefit of the doubt. But considering what you told me, I'm sure the handwriting is fake and the seal could have been stolen from your purse or something. I repeat that you should go see a lawyer and consult them about that too. Once the documents were out in the open, they were subject to the law, so I immediately went to a lawyer who could consult with me on the same day. I was a little overcharged for the consultation, but I was grateful for the immediate help I received. When I told the lawyer everything, he told me that if I could prove that I didn't write the divorce papers myself, or if I could prove that my husband wrote the papers himself, they would be able to render the divorce documents moot, and thus the divorce wouldn't be settled. So, essentially, all I have to do is get my husband to confess to what he did?
Yes, that would be enough evidence.
So my scumbag of a husband and I can get a proper divorce. I quickly signed the contract with a lawyer on the spot because I thought it would be better to have a third party, considering the fact that I had just lost my mind and gone off the deep end. I went home after that, and after I left the recording function on my phone turned on, I opened the door and walked inside. Raoul was looking triumphant.
What the frick did I tell you, Anne? You and I have been strangers for a long time now.
And he looked down at me with a look of condescension, one particular expression I'd never seen on his face before.
You can't do the housework even though you're a frickin' woman, and if that's the case, I thought you'd at least make more money than me. But you only make a little more than me. You don't have any privileges or luxuries. At first, I thought you were kind and attractive, but you've got a disposition that is just bad enough to bore a stack of bricks. And you won't even let me do my own things. No wonder I divorced you, eh?
In other words, any stupid woman can shut the frick up and carry the money wagon, or else be dumped like a truckload of trash. I took several deep breaths and glared at my husband as I said, "But still, how could you falsify divorce documents just because you think I'm a stupid woman?" I lashed out at him, but he showed no remorse as he calmly said with that same coy smile,
You would never fill it in for me now, would you? It was a piece of cake. City Hall accepted it so easily without a sliver of suspicion. You write so beautifully, it's annoying. Because it was hard to copy your handwriting, I'll be honest.
He literally overtly confessed to falsifying the documents, and he didn't even know he was being recorded. What a stupid bastard. I was on the verge of exploding, but my husband's confession calmed me down quite a bit, and I managed to keep my composure. So I did as I was told, packed up my belongings, left the house, and moved to my parents' house, and I started to take revenge on him. Later, my lawyer contacted Mr. Pattinson and demanded alimony from him and his adulterous lover. Fortunately, the divorce papers were only submitted a year ago, so I was legally able to file a claim for alimony, as the limit to doing so is 3 years. Mr. Pattinson, the adulterous partner, whose name turned out to be Olivia, and I had a meeting with my lawyer, and Mr. Pattinson said the normal, unoriginal,
She's pregnant now and life's going to be very difficult for some time. What if something happened to her?
He had the audacity to put his own evil doings up on the shelf to make a series of scandalous remarks, but my lawyer calmly responded,
If you refuse to comply to the demands for alimony made by Anne, we'll just have to go to court. With all this evidence against you, though, I professionally believe it's going to be hard for the pair of you to win.
That's what he told Mr. Pattinson and Olivia, but Raoul was still hesitant to comply. Then Olivia, who couldn't stand the sight of him being tormented as such, finally said, all right, I'll pay you. Now let's get out of here, Raoul, and out of this horrible woman's life. That's what she suggested, and that's when things changed for the better.
Oh, no. You don't mind, honey? How sweet of you.
Mr. Pattinson's eyes lit up. While he was being subjected to this ridiculous charade, he still managed to keep his hopes of flowery gardens and eternal spring in his mind, and I just can't help but sigh in exasperation. I supposed it was time I showed him the reality of the situation and demanded the alimony as a lump sum. The woman immediately transferred the money to my account because she could actually afford it. They then said they could finally cut me off now, and they stood up in a good mood. Sure, the divorce is over, but this was not the end of my revenge just yet. I proceeded to report him to the police for falsification of signed official documents and for bigamy. With the recording providing confessional evidence, I could prove that he forged the divorce documents. Therefore, the divorce papers Mr. Pattinson filed a year ago were deemed invalid, and he was now a legal polygamist because he was once married to both me and the woman whom he cheated on me with. After I submitted a victim report to the police, he was later arrested because he had filed a damage report. The penalty for falsification of signed official documents is a few months to a few years in prison, and for bigamy, it's 2 years in prison. Mr. Pattinson was able to get out with a suspended sentence, but from this point on, things started spiraling down to hell. The woman whom he was having an affair with was actually an employee of a business partner of his workplace. To make matters worse for Mr. Pattinson, she was the daughter of the company's president. He happened to meet her when he went to our client's place of business, and it seems that he had his eyes on her, aiming to marry into money. Mr. Pattinson did have a nice, handsome face, so it seems the adulteress was also attracted to him. The reason he was able to act like that, even though I found out about the affair, was because he thought he could still become the rightful heir to his lover's father's company as a future son-in-law. But it obviously didn't work out quite that way, and her father, the president of the company, was furious that her boyfriend got his daughter pregnant and was even arrested for falsifying official documents. As a result, the company cut off business with his workplace, causing substantial damage to the company. He was thus held liable for the company's damages, and they demanded he pay compensation. As of now, a huge debt rests on his shoulders, and he's struggling to stay afloat.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. I was supposed to be rich.
Is what a friend of mine heard him scream near some cheap apartment. Olivia had left her husband too, but now she has to face the challenge of raising a child on her own. Plus, it would be hard to get a young man because having a child would put her at the highest disadvantage. Mr. Pattinson filed the divorce documents that I provided once again, and after I submitted them to the City Hall, this time they were accepted without any problem. We got a proper divorce, finally. With the lump sum alimony I received, I moved into a nice apartment close to work, and I'm now immersed in my job, which I love, while slowly learning to do housework, which, I repeat, I am not very good at. I need to reflect on the fact that I left everything to my ex-husband up until now, but nothing ever goes right the first time, and today, I'm enjoying my life alone, trying my absolute darndest to not burn an egg sunny side up.